Hello, everyone. Adam here from Three Cat Radio, and today I have a recurring guest on my show with a different, very different attitude. It's the Void. How you doing, mate?
Good, thank you, Adam. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. I've had a rather chill, good day. I'm ready for a good night of a good podcast with a good friend who unfortunately punched me in the chest, but we let bygones be bygones. Well, on that one.
You had it coming.
I don't know what I did wrong. I was sat in the crowd.
Just
Enjoy.
didn't like the way you looked. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll try better next time. Um, yeah, you've undergone quite a change from the last time we spoke. Um, Simple question: what is the void?
So the void is everything that I couldn't be before. I wasn't before. So obviously previously, as Balatius, you know, everybody expected a certain level of stoicism, a certain level of almost like mystique, and I think that there's definitely room for that, but not it isn't me, and it never was. And I think that after my loss to Aitonstein, something kind of just snapped, and I knew I needed to come back. Masking myself like that was only making me weaker. And so, coming back as I am now, which is sort of the full, authentic, nothing held back, no filter. I'll say whatever's on my mind, and there's no code of conduct to follow anymore. It's liberating, it's freeing, it's good fun.
Yeah, it's unpredictable. I'll say that much. It's very unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get when we get the void to come out on TV, and I'm not gonna lie. Like the last show, it was my mum, me, and Emma stood in a row a row just crying, laughing. Just like it
Well,
was in incredible.
it's all about crowd engagement. It's all about, um, having fun. I don't mind if people are laughing at me, if people are laughing with me, if
Mm,
people are booing me, if people are rooting for the opposition. People care now. I think before there was a level of, it was just sort of going through the motions. And I think that because, as I say, I had to have that sort of element of stoicism
yeah,
being as I was. I think that now, now that I've sort of took those shackles off of myself, it invites the crowd into my world and they can make of me whatever they want and it doesn't matter. But as long as the crowd care, then I'm happy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I was a fan of the Bellatius gimmick, and I thought you were a monster. But I also am so glad that the void is now a thing, and you've let the shackles off, as you say, because it's giving you that sense of freedom. It's giving you that you were you weren't as able you weren't really able to get that inner you out. And with this current gimmick, you've got legs. You never know what you're gonna get, and it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's exciting for every show.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's exciting for me. I don't know what's going to come out from show to show.
Mm,
I take a lot of inspiration from my opponents, whoever they are and whatever they're doing at that moment in time. I take a
yeah,
lot of inspiration from that, and that can go in any direction at all. Because I do like to think that I'm quite capable of thinking on my feet quite quickly and going with the flow. And I think that there's an element of play in all of wrestling in terms of like call and response. The crowd wants something, and us as contenders and us as wrestlers and us as athletes, we've got to give that to them and deliver that to them.
yeah,
And so there's an element of playing quick wittedness there, and this very much allows me to lean into that, which I think is why. I think the crowd are enjoying it a lot more. I know you were a fan of the Blighty's character, and so was I. That was my first character, and that
Mm.
was gonna hold a place near and dear to my heart. But realistically, if you look back where I was at my debut, the first time I ever come out in the LWF, it was very similar. There was a couple of nuance changes there, but it was very similar to where I left it at the end. And I think that now I don't know where I'll be in a week. I don't know where I'll be in a year, and that's exciting for me because it means that it's something different and new for me. And I'd love to give people a glimpse of what's coming up, but I just don't know. That's the fun part.
Yeah. But do you see it as more or less of a challenge with the current gimmick as opposed to Baratius with the ambiguity of not knowing what's coming up?
Weirdly less. I think that
Mm.
I find it less of a challenge because it's closer to my natural state of just living in absolute chaos and taking each day as it comes. I think Balatius was very regimented, and that was a lot harder for me to sort of play that all the time. I can't take anything seriously for too long before I start going off on a tangent. And like I say, that was very much this mask that I had to put on as Balatius, but now sort of the shackles are thrown off. Now I'm the void, and what you see is what you get. I am a mustache twiddling supervillain at the moment, and who knows what I'll be next week.
Very much like my brother. My brother's fashion sense he's got his very twirled up supervillain mustache. I always do the Waluigi wah to him just any
Yeah,
chance I can get.
let's not get that started. Thanks, Adam.
We've already got Ace Wheeler having enough chance, don't need giving you them as
Mm.
well.
You can give me what you want. I'll give it right back.
Oh God, I know that much. I've known you long enough to know that much.
Yep.
I think one question everyone needs to know, very, very much needs to know, is where did you get your smooth moves?
Which smooth? I don't know what you're talking about.
I see you in that ring with those smooth dance moves, those smooth moves. Oh, Mr. Slick over here.
That just comes from having the athlete's physique that I've got. It just comes naturally. No, it's just an element of play. There's a lot of tricks up my sleeve that I haven't yet to show. And that's why I like with the promos and things like that. That's why I like doing something different every time. I like doing parodies. I like taking inspiration from a number of things. I like trying new things out. Taking some big swings with promos, I think, is a lot of fun, and I've got a lot of talents and tricks, and I'm still finding new talents and tricks as well. So I enjoy exploring that through this as well, and always at the expense of my next opponent as well, no doubt.
Yeah. Is there anything outside of wrestling that you take inspiration from for the gimmick?
A lot of comedy, a lot of stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is something that's quite near and dear to my heart. I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy. I've never really had the guts to do it.
Mm.
I think that I'd really enjoy that. But I think that I'm one of those people that's funnier in the moment. And I think that wrestling allows me to be in the moment more than stand-up comedy would. Now, I do still think that I could hold my own up there, but I think this is the best sort of medium for my sort of style and my comedy and things like that. But a lot of like physical comedians, like I watched a lot of like Lee Evans growing up, and he
Oh
was very
yeah.
physical with his jokes and things like that. He wouldn't just tell a joke; he'd act a joke. He'd do it very physical.
Mm.
Um, and I always found that really funny. There was like a degree of mime to that as well. And I take inspiration from all sorts of places like that. You've watched my recent promo. I take inspiration from TV shows that I enjoy. I recently did one which I won't mention the real name for copyright reasons. We're not trying to get this taken down, but based on a very sort of popular Channel 4 reaction show. I just have all these ideas in my head of, what would that look like from the Void's perspective, and it's fun to sort of go down that route, and sort of tell stories through physicality, which is harkening back to that sort of the mime aspect that I talked about earlier. I think that there's a lot to be said about what you say, but there's also a lot to be said about how you move, how you act, what you do. You know, you can tell a story without words and things like that as well. So, you know, even the way I move around the ring, you know, the way I sort of hold myself, facial expressions and things like that, I take a lot of inspiration from that. And that's sort of harkening back to my days doing theatre at school and things like that. You know, in another life, I'd love to do something like that as like my job, as my career. But I think that's a very right place, right time kind of industry. But this is a really nice sort of medium and channel for it, where I get to do all of these things that I never thought I'd get to do. You know, the time when they put a mask on us and asked us to act with just our bodies and we couldn't show our face and we couldn't speak and we had to act something out. And I thought, at the time you think, what's this for? When am I ever going to use that? Well, here it is. I'm using it in wrestling. Because my face, the front row might get it, but the back row might not. And so I've still got to tell that story through my body and through how I move and things like that. So there's lots of elements, there's lots of sort of moving parts there that I'm trying to think about, which other people probably do think about, but I think I pay a lot more attention to some of those details because that's just the way my brain works. Is I like sort of thinking through those things in a more detailed or oriented sense. I often, you're always thinking of thinking on your feet, what's your opponent going to do and reacting to that, but also I want to communicate myself and what I want to get across in the best way. And so I'm trying to think about that as well, which might be giving me too many plates to spin, but I seem to be doing all right at the moment, I think.
I think you're someone who likes that though.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm somebody who has a million and one thoughts going on in my brain. I can't switch off at night. My head's racing and things like that. So again, I alluded to that before, about living in the chaos. And that's what I mean when I say I probably give it more thought than other people. That's not to say that, my opponents and my fellow wrestlers are not thinking about those things, because they definitely are. But I focus in and fixate on those details. They are really important to me, where I feel like maybe for other people, they're probably thinking, oh, you're overthinking it. But that for me is where I start, and the rest sort of builds around that. I don't know if that's I haven't really spoken with anybody about this, like the way that they think, but I think about sort of the way I'm conducting myself before sort of anything my opponent's doing. And yeah, it's worked out for me so far. Never been pinned, never been submitted. That's still going strong.
Lovely stuff. That's Paul. um, yeah, I am. I've been watching thingy twice, the Evans. Been watching the Evans twice, and wait, when once from my dad, once from my mom. My dad
Yeah,
was just like, nah, can't be doing with it, but I'll just take him. He likes him. Yeah, by the end of it, he was crying,
yeah, it's good.
howling.
He's
He's,
hilarious, and as
he
well,
is.
I think as well, I've got pretty thick accent as well.
Hmm.
Anybody else who is a bigger guy in the northwest of England will know the parallels with Peter Kay can't be shaken. You will get told at least 3 times a year, "You sound like Peter Kay," particularly if you like have a bit of a sense of humor. So that's always been all the way throughout my life, and I think that sort of um, working class accent puts people at ease as well. So hearing a big guy get into the ring, and I love playing with those contrasts. So I'm a big guy who gets into the ring. I'm a big imposing figure, and I never want to lose that. I still want to be a monster in that ring. But then when a working class accent comes out, and I'm sort of spouting out jokes or not taking something too seriously, it's playing with that juxtaposition. I think there's a lot of humor in that as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And and the running when with your latest match against Maddie,
Mm-hmm.
which from start to finish, I think the running theme at the moment was chaos in the
Oh, it is.
absolute best way. When Steve Ibby, the commissioner, finally gave you the match, and you just ran around the ring, like you'd won the match already, celebrating that you were given the match and everything. Like we were laughing before the bell even rang, and it was a great match, really well done. A few interferences here or there, but
More than one. They were all up to it because, of course, they can't, but more than one.
Mr. Rocky Rockwilder and the man who I'm not gonna lie, bit partial to because he saved me from a bit more of a beating from you, Mr. Casey himself, the
It's Carlisle.
superhero. Hmm. He saved me from you, so I think you can understand I like him, but a bit partial.
Hmm.
But you lost by a count out, I believe.
That's right. I did.
Big
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I mean, it was a pretty tough one to take. I mean, you saw my reaction when the match was called on. You know, there's a big size mismatch there, and I think that you know, who wouldn't want a match like that where you're three times bigger than your opponent? And I think that for large portions of that match, the beginning sort of notwithstanding when she jumped me, the referee called the bell and she jumped me pretty quickly, caught me off guard. As soon as I took control, that was it, really. I don't really think Maddie got much of a foothold back in that match. And then obviously the interference, where first Casey comes out, and I expected that. I mean, somebody's in trouble, and who should show up but a superhero? I kind of expected that, and that was absolutely fine. Took him out, and then of course Rocky Rottweiler comes out as well, who another sort of being of chaos, if you will, very unpredictable.
Very much
And
so.
I have seen the promotion where they like to say that nothing was on that rag. They just saw me wiping my armpits with it in the locker room and thought that that would be enough. But let me tell you now, that's not the case. My armpits smell wonderful, and there's nothing irritable there at all. And whatever was on that rag, was a harmful substance, and I don't advocate for that in my matches. And I'm not really sure that that's superhero conduct either from Casey.
Maybe not. Or maybe you gotta work with what you've got.
Hmm.
Maybe.
And also, Casey likes to say, oh, Maddie won that match on her own merit and she deserves it. Well, of course, he would say that, wouldn't he? Because if he does own up to the fact that he interfered with that match, then Maddie gets disqualified. But then if he doesn't own up, then he can't say as a superhero that he's ever saved anybody. So, as an in-ring talent, he's great. He's one to watch. He's one for the future.
Mm.
I think he conducts himself in the ring very, very well, but his win-loss record speaks for itself. His segments speak for itself. He's saved absolutely nobody that he's come out to save. He's more of a super zero, really. He's a big fat loser in that regard.
Whoa, that's some strong words there.
Stand by it, and I'll tell you to your face as well, Casey.
Strong words. Strong words indeed. Oof. But that's a bit heated here. You had a face off, be it rather fleeting,
Mm.
but you had a face off giant to giant. How'd you feel about that one when you came out?
Well, he's a big fella. That's the first time I've ever had to look
Mm.
up. I didn't know my neck moved that way, to be honest with you. So he's a big guy, and a lot of people are reading into that look. I've seen Casey saying that I looked afraid. I don't think my face moved at all. I don't think I showed any sort of emotion. But how I interpret that is when you've been doing this as long as I have, and you see somebody else coming in who is the same, as you, the giant, the Titan, Chad Austin. There's an element of sort of respect there, I think, between us. And whether that respect is going to, sort of evolve into some sort of rivalry and a scramble for that position in the LWF, or whether that respect will evolve into, a long lasting friendship and a very, very troublesome sort of predicament for the rest of the LWF locker room. That remains to be seen. We've sort of floated the idea of meeting up to talk, but I don't deal with lawyers, and that just in case is always there. Everyone thinks I'm the supervillain. He's got a lawyer in his corner. He's the real supervillain here. The lawyers. Um, and so, I think we are going to get together at some point. I was surprised to learn that Chad Austin talks personally. I don't, having a mouthpiece in his lawyer in his corner. I don't think he says anything without the lawyer sort of drafting up a contract and a script. That's why he always takes just in case around with him. So I'm not really sure what I can make of Chad Austin at the moment, but that look was certainly feeling each other out, and it'd be interesting to see where that dynamic goes for sure.
100%. Yeah, it was very interesting for me. And
I can tell you now, it's not fear though. I don't fear that man. I fear nobody.
I didn't bring it up that wasn't the intention. I didn't see
No,
any, to
not
be
you,
honest.
not you. I've just seen it out there and I've got to address it. You're giving me the forum here to address that.
Of
And
course,
again, Casey Carlisle, he's like a bad smell. Honestly, he just doesn't go away. And so I've just got to address that on this public forum here.
of course. Yeah, no problem at all. I didn't see any at all. I thought, from a fan's perspective, it was very interesting indeed, because there's you and Moonbird and now Chad Austin. So the bigger guys, the giants, are starting to show up in the AWF.
And for a time, I guess I was probably the only one in the LWF. And now, as you say, Moonbear's been around for a long time now. Chad Austin making a very, very strong claim there in his first match. And I think that, for a lot of people, they wonder how I'm going to react to that. But, you know, I have that element of sort of chaos and unpredictability in my style, which I don't think those guys bring. I think you know exactly what you're going to get. I mean, Moonbear, for goodness sake, he calls his biggest move corner cuddles as he's about to do it. Talk about predictable. And Chad Austin sworn to silence. I think that we'll see that there's a formula. I think it'll be a winning formula. I think it'll be a strong one, but I think we'll see a formula to his matches, and I think that uh, you know the winner will be the one who deviates from that in terms of who is the biggest giant in the LWF. I'm confident that I could come out on top in that.
You are definitely are unique. That much is correct. I love personally the laugh, which is yet to perfect. There's a little bit of a cough coming up there, but the laugh is
It's coming along. It's coming along.
that,
You
and
know,
the
and
dramatic.
the tash is growing by the day as well. Just
Hmm.
needs a bit of, it's not. I've not got the product today. You see, it's that's safe for special occasions. But
Of course.
um, once I get that up and going, I feel so it's like something comes over me. There's just the supervillain arc just sort of feels right at the moment. And it makes it even easier that I've got Casey Carlisle declaring himself a superhero. For as long as he's declaring himself a superhero and for as long as he's making himself a thorn in my side, I'm more than happy to play the antithesis to that role.
Well, there isn't a superhero without a supervillain now, is there?
Exactly, and vice versa.
Hmm. Agreed. Can't agree more. The change in music, is that a stake to claim now? The dramatic, thunderous music, because I gotta say I'm a fan.
It felt right. It felt right after that performance.
Mm,
It felt right after coming out and seeing Casey there and declaring myself as the LWF supervillain. It felt right, and I think again the LWF crowd reacted to that. I think they knew what that meant. I think it conveyed the right atmosphere. So yeah, I think that that's a statement of intent certainly, and I think that that is it sort of it gives me you'll hear that sting, that opening sting, and you'll know exactly who it is who's coming out of that ring. I think it's iconic. I think it's meaningful. I think it's impactful, and I think that moving forward, yeah, it'll definitely provide the correct atmosphere, shall we say?
yeah, yeah, having dramatic, booming music like that in, say, St. Mary's or St. Joseph's. Yeah, it's a stark contrast to what we have with Moonbear. Very stark
Definitely.
contrast there, and I like that. We need drama, we need full
Yeah.
on drama. So
Always bring the drama.
I've had this conversation with you before, but you and I both know I love like full on like character work in wrestling. Like your Kane's, Undertakers, and Bray Wyatt like characters invest in, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've gravitated to your current gimmick is because of not just because of the character, but because of the scope that you've got, the creative scope you have with the gimmick. As we're saying, it's just pure chaos. Each time you come out, it's just we've got three weeks in a row with LWF, which for a fan is a treat. Can't argue with that. But it's just you never know, as you say, you never know what you're gonna get, and something like that just brings an air of intrigue.
The thing is, as well, I wanted to mention this earlier when we were talking about sort of the change between sort of Bolatius and the Void where we are now. Nothing's been lost there. I can
Mm.
still, before the character was almost secondary to the in ring, and I think that that's important whilst you're developing as a wrestler and finding your feet in the LWF. I think that's really, really important. But nothing's been lost there. I can still do that same in ring stuff. I can still be a dominant force, a monster, and a giant in that locker room. That is all still there. It's just now I've got that element of unpredictability, that element of play, that element of audience interaction. It lets them into the world a little bit more. And this as you say, I've got a lot of scope now, and this is all taking shape because of the way that the audience reacts and what the fans want to see. They come first in this really, in terms of whatever they respond to. Whatever they hate, whatever they find ridiculously despicable and evil. I'm going to lap it up and I'm going to do it more. So keep reacting, keep booing, keep chanting, keep doing whatever you're doing because it's our lifeblood as performers, and I love to respond to that, and I always will.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Without fans, there's no wrestling. Without wrestling, there's no fans. There's just like it can sometimes. I had spoke to Peter Dotson about it as well. Um, I think sometimes with some people it can and through no fault of their own, of course, people can sometimes get caught up in the match and kind of forget the interaction as such with the fans. And it's such a huge part of the show because it's theatre, it's showmanship.
Yeah,
So I
I think
think,
as well. I think there are some people that get caught up in the match because their passion is in
mhm,
the physicality of wrestling.
yes,
And, I'm certainly passionate about that, but I think my passion first and foremost is the performance. And as well, I think some people find it hard to let their creation go. As wrestlers, we come up with like the seeds of an idea, and then it's sort of the crowd and what direction, how they take things and experimenting and interacting that shapes ultimately how that character is going to grow. But I think for a lot of people, they find it hard to sort of let their baby go and be in the hands of other people. I think they find it hard to, respond because they didn't want to go down that route. But
yeah,
actually, you've just got to go with the flow with this sort of thing. And if the crowd's booing you like really, really strongly for something, you've hit something there. If that wasn't the focal point that you wanted to do, if it was something else that you wanted to do, guess what? That doesn't matter anymore because ultimately it's not about what you want to do. You've got to be driven by reactions and moments. And if you're giving the crowd those reactions and moments, and it's not for the things that you predicted it would be for, it's really, really important then that you're focusing more on those moments of and those reactions rather than it being for the right things and hitting the right beats as you thought. Because ultimately, if you try and predict what an audience are going to think and feel, you're going to be wrong a lot of the time. I think it's a very, very fine art to do that, and I think you can do it certainly to a degree. But if you were to try to predict down to a T how the crowd are going to react to your match, which bits are they going to chant in, which bits are they going to clap in, which bits are they going to boo in, you'd be hard pressed to get it right 100% of the time. You just would. So I think that ultimately you've got to be driven by, okay, at this point, at some point, I want the crowd to boo me. I want the crowd to hate me. At some point, I want the crowd to laugh at me. At some point, I want the crowd to laugh with me, and it's about sort of finding ways organically to sort of create those moments where you let the crowd in and you let them dictate sort of the pace of a moment. I think that's really, really important. And I think that's something that I'm learning to focus on more. And I think a lot of other people, should focus on more as well. I think it's really rewarding. I don't see why you wouldn't. I think it's great.
It's perfectly put. Absolutely perfectly put. Yeah, I completely agree. And it differs promotion to promotion, venue to venue.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
I always look at like say Hesketh Bank in comparison to say St Mary's. I think they're two different crowds because it's two different venues, but it's the same show. Like the Hesketh Bank crowd is mad. It's a very very solid crowd, um, and you can get solid crowds. But like if you're going from say LWF to BTW to let's go extreme and say TNT or something like that,
yeah,
it's learning then not just to deal with one crowd, but then to take it somewhere and go, how am I going to get it and navigate it and translate it to this crowd?
yeah,
And that I can I can only speak from experience as a fan, of
yeah,
course. Um, but I can imagine it being quite jarring to try and translate something that you've gotten down quite well at one promotion to another one
mhm.
and be like, right, this didn't work here. What do I do to like how do I navigate this to try and get this to work at this place rather than this place? So I imagine it could be quite jarring at first and well, the journey of being a pro wrestler.
Yeah, and I think that's a privilege. I think that's a there are worse problems to have. I think that's an interesting problem to try and solve. I mean, I'm quite fortunate in that the promotions I've worked, the LWF, TWA, very, very similar in terms of what the fans react to.
Yeah.
In terms of they are both really, really strong believers in wrestling being character driven and entertaining and wanting, storylines and really, really responsive to comedy as well.
Mm.
And I think, I'm always looking to broaden my horizons and work for other promotions as well. And I'd love one day to work for a promotion that's vastly different because, maybe the void looks different elsewhere as he does at the LWF at TWA. And that's for me to figure out as a performer. And much in the same way that, I'm always looking at how are my moments that I'm trying to put out there, how are they being received? It's just the same process. But ultimately, if you're at a crowd that wants to see more of the big guy stuff, wants to see more of an imposing figure, the comedy's always going to be there because it's an important part of the character and it's an important part of the identity. But maybe the emphasis goes elsewhere, and it's just about being able to be flexible with your creation. And like you say, it must be a difficult problem. I can't really speak much on it because, as I say, the promotions I've worked have a lot of crossover in terms of what they enjoy. They're not one to one, but there's a
Mm.
lot of crossover there, which makes it easier for me and my style of character that I'm currently working at my promotions. But if I was to go elsewhere, I'd have to figure that out, and I think that is a massive problem. I think that's like a huge sort of not a problem in the bad sense, but problem is in like a conundrum, a puzzle to solve. I think that's an incredible puzzle, and I think that's a privilege because ultimately wrestling, wherever you go, it's about connecting with people, it's about connecting with the fans and making memorable moments. And so you've got to figure out what does this crowd want to see and make that moment memorable for them. And I think that having the versatility to do that in different ways at different promotions must be an incredibly sort of gratifying feeling. And it's something I'd love to do further down the line in my career.
100%, yeah, definitely. So I same here, yeah, because as I've said numerous times on here, people probably getting bored. I'm saying it. I want to manage. I do want to manage. I'm not going to say anything about my upcoming Wrestler Story show because well, we will leak that as time comes on. But
But when are
I
we
do.
dropping details about that, Adam? When's that all starting to drip feed out?
We'll wait and see, won't we? We'll wait and see, my friend. We'll wait and see.
Keeping us on our toes. I thought I could get something out of him then, guys.
Not even the void can get that information out of me. Yeah, I, in my mind, have, I'm not gonna say really dark, but it's character, pure character, because it's not like light-hearted and jolly. Let's just say that it's quite dark and brooding. But I'm also thinking I've watched the LWF for long enough that it's gonna need to have that comedic edge to it as well. You're gonna need to be able to lean into that side because you're gonna get ribbed and by the fans, and if I'm gonna be put up against the person I'm managing is gonna be put up against one of the Languedors, you're not gonna get a serious match there, are you? Let's be
No.
honest, it's just not. It's how they are, and it's fantastic. But um, that's a conundrum I'd love to have to work
Yeah,
from. Like,
I think there's ways of doing that without sort of compromising what you want the character to stand for and who you want the character to be. I think you've got to look at the right sort of places. I think if you look in any aspects of comedy, there's always the straight man is what they call it. Where like they're the butt of the jokes,
yeah,
but they're serious and they they don't want to be the butt of the jokes. And the comedy comes from the fact that they can't handle the fact that other people aren't taking them seriously. So if you're trying to be this dark and brooding figure, and the Lancadors are teasing you, and the fans are teasing you, and you're getting some chance, and you're dismissing it, how you dismiss that is where that comedy can lie without
yeah,
compromising your character's serious brooding dark nature. So there's definitely ways in which you can do that. But it's doable. It's just finding creative solutions to these problems, really.
yeah. And that's the fun part for me. That's the part I want to really dig into because, as you say with your promos, I love that. Promos are great. I always love promos. I love what you've been putting out. I love what shout out as well. I love what Dustin Greaves has been putting out as well. He's been fantastic recently. He's got a knack for promo. Um, so I just want to give him a little shout out as well.
Yeah, go
Um,
for it. It's doing a lot of good work.
he is, yeah, he's great. Yeah, he's been coming on a lot, and I've liked the story as well of him just coming up short each time. It's just gotten that bit too much for him, and I like it. I've when you follow it and you see it, it's great. But yeah, it's that's the sort of stuff I want to like kind of in the moment react
Yeah.
and like and kind of. So I'm one of those. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those. Like 9 times out of the time, I'm thinking about wrestling. Uh, there's a 1% of the time I'm not, but I'm probably asleep. But other than that, I just am. It's just always there. I'm always thinking about those. I'm thinking about those tiny little intricacies because the fans pick up on that. Fans pick up on the smaller details.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that promos, at least for me, they exist in a different sort of sphere to sort of your live matches. Because again, sort of harkening back to how I, feel I'm funniest in the moment. When you're reacting to a live crowd, they're unpredictable. They are an element of surprise and an element of chaos. 1 minute they might be laughing at you, and the next minute you're losing their interest, and you've got to do something quickly to get them back. So you've always got to sort of react to them, and so in that regard, that's where you test that skill to be able to think on your feet. But then with a promo, you can shut that camera off and retake. There's tons of clips of me filming those promos on the cutting room floor where I'm
Yeah.
not giving what I want to give, or I get frustrated and it's like Pilates has come back out because I just want to punch my phone because I've said the same word wrong for the last 3 takes. You know what I mean? So there's the two very different skills to exercise, and I think that um, there's a lot of crossover in skill there, but one is very much an improv side of things, and one is a very can you be scripted and can you be funny, and as well, I think in some ways the improv's almost easier because you can get a feel for what the crowd's enjoying and
Yeah.
not enjoying, and if they've laughed at that, then they're probably going to like this. Oh, they did, that's great. Whereas in a promo, you're talking to your camera and you've written it down because you think you're hilarious, and guess what? You might not be, and it might not translate all that well, and you don't know. And there's an element of insecurity there sometimes with
Mm,
making promos. But ultimately, I think where I'm at now is, am I happy with what I'm putting out? Would I find that funny? Because I'm learning to trust myself. Because what I think would be funny on show day is translating really well and is being funny. So as long as what I'm putting out is true by me and true by something that I think I'd like to see if I was a fan. What would I find funny? What would I like to see? As long as it passes that litmus test of myself, I'm happy with it going out there, no matter how it's received. It doesn't matter how many likes. That's not
Mm.
really like a currency that I'm trying to read into anymore because I think that, that's a really dangerous road to go down online.
It is.
But am I happy? Am I content with what I'm putting out there? And for everything I've put out sort of recently, the answer's been yes. So, I'm pretty happy with where it's going and things like that. So, yeah, but they're two very different skills, and you're never going to be able to work in front of a live crowd until you're sort of show ready, and then the time comes, and then that's where your character sort of lives or dies. Really, that's where you've got to sort of look at tweaking, look at going back to the drawing board if things aren't working. So, you can put out as many promos as possible, but that sort of live reaction on that opening day, that debut day, is massive. And
Hmm.
I was so nervous putting this character out there for the first time.
I
When
bet,
I
yeah.
came out there and they interrupted Casey Carlisle and they interrupted Cosplay Ken. It was really, really nerve-wracking for me to do that and to put this new idea out there. But I'll tell you now, I had an idea of where I wanted this character to go, and it wasn't where it is now. It was similar. I wanted there to be a comedic aspect, but I wanted there to be more of a sort of a dark side, more of a creepy aspect. And
Mm.
the crowd reacted to the comedy in a way that I could never, ever, ever have predicted. If you go back to that sort of that first appearance by me, I was in like a shirt and tie. I wanted that to be very sort of, oh, like he's coming out in a shirt and tie. It's very mysterious. He's corporate. That's or like, it's kind of creepy how he's coming out in formal wear. Like it's quite off-putting, quite jarring. And actually, that aspect of the character is still there to a degree, but it's fallen a little bit by the wayside. There's some eccentricities and things like that, but that's sort of fallen by the wayside. And actually, what the crowd have reacted to is slapstick, is the comedy. And so that has become a much bigger part of this. And that's all come from fan reaction. So that's sort of like a brief look into how, you know, I prefer to come with a seed of an idea and let the fans take it. I had a prediction for it to go right. It went left. And I'm loving that it went left. And I'm just, seeing where that's going to go and where that's going to take me. And I'm really excited for that as well.
Yeah, it's just testament to the crowd because, as you say, like, you've got to be humble with this sort of thing, humble and patient because you can't demand from a crowd. We've seen it on the big stage with Roman for about 5 years. You can't command from a crowd
No.
because if a crowd is stuck in, galvanized, indignant, you've got to listen.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. So you can't be commanding. You can't be stubborn. I guess that's the word. Um, it's all about listening, receiving, seeing what you can do, and so it's just the love of wrestling. Because I've been through the curtain a few times, not as a wrestler, but as a personality, and like beforehand, I'm nervous as all hell. As soon as I go out there, it's the best feeling in the world. You can't explain it. It's like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love it. And like, no matter what hardships or roadblocks or anything, it ain't stopping me because Christ, wrestling's great.
It's good. Yeah, it's great. And there's room for everybody, ring announcers. I said this last time I was on ring announcers, lighting, music,
Mm,
there's people involved in wrestling from the top down that by and large, fans sat in the crowd aren't really going to notice, aren't really gonna, because they're not the performers, they're not front and center, but they're
mm,
imperative to it, and they're really really important to it as well. So there's a place for everybody in wrestling. There's so many diverse skill sets that
mm.
come together to make this thing that we all love as well. So I think that that's great. I think there's a place for sort of everybody in wrestling. The only thing you've got to have in common is just a love for the art form, and I think that at the LWF where I work, sort of primarily, I think we've got that, and I think increasingly so as time's gone on, we've sort of found more people in our sphere who share that love, and I think we're building a really, really strong, future there. I'm really sort of proud of the ethos that we're building and the way that also the performers are talking about it backstage in terms of wanting to react to crowd things. I think maybe I think we're thinking about that a lot more at the moment. That's the way I'd prefer it to go because that's how I work best as a performer anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm really liking the ethos that we're building as well.
Yeah, 110%. It's clean. There's a goal, and they're bringing in local hardworking talent through the ranks. Yeah, they'll bring in some big names, of course, but they're bringing in people who are training through the ranks, and it shows just how organic the love is. Because you have to love this. You can't go into wrestling without the passion because you'll burn out quick. So
Wrestling's based on trust as well.
yeah,
There's a big element of trust in wrestling, and so that's why you'll see the same lighting people work in the same promotions, the same music people work in the promotions, and that's why your opponents, our opponents, we hate them. I don't like Casey Carlisle, but there's a chemistry there, and there is a respect there. There's a lot of sort of trust there that between us we can entertain and give the crowd a good show. And so I think that working and working with the people that are at training and that are developing and coming through, that builds that trust. And I think that communicates through chemistry, whether that's sort of in your tag team, in the tag team sort of championships, the chemistry between B and Marauder, for example, or the chemistry between the Meat Wagon, that sort of thing. Whether it's that sort of chemistry or whether it's bitter rivals, whether it's your sort of feuds and ongoing things that have been going on for months. There's got to be an element of trust there, and that's all founded in working together and coming through that same setup at the LWF in our case. And I think that the fact that we're starting to push and promote that talent as they come through is really, really, really exciting.
yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't be prouder to be a part of the IWF in any capacity whatsoever. I couldn't be more proud because it's the place that has given me I've been given an opportunity there to show in at right now limited capacity, but just to show what I've got to offer and for them to put trust in me.
Mm-hmm.
When someone puts trust in you, it's rewarding and it gives you that thought like right, they put trust in me. I need to return it. I need to do damn well in returning it because they've trusted you. You don't
Yeah,
want to squander that trust.
yeah. So
Uh,
that trust obviously means a lot as you're
mm,
attesting to from us to them, but also I think that trust builds a better product for the crowd
agreed.
to consume as well. I think that without that trust, if you were to get sort of two names from, two big names in British indie wrestling and put them on, they'd put on a great show and the crowd would probably love the performance that they're seeing. But by giving people the same people that are there working together, there's an element of chemistry there, and there's a tried and testedness to it as well, where you can build those stories, which ultimately I think have bigger payoffs. So it's really good as well that we're starting to see a lot more people sort of coming through the academy. A lot more people sort of coming up and sharing their stories and things like that. I think that's really cool, and I think that they're doing a great job of listening, and I think that they're coming through with the right attitudes now of reacting to the crowd, giving the crowd ownership of their character and seeing where the crowd and working together as a performer and the crowd to sort of shape and mold that character. I think that a lot of these new guys that are coming through, I think, are doing a really, really good job of that. Again, got to shout him out just because we're we don't get on in the ring, but Casey Carlisle, this whole superhero thing, the crowd are starting to really buy into that, and he's doing a great job there of really you know, letting the crowd take ownership of that and letting me take ownership of that as well. You know, I'm your supervillain, so I'm sort of dictating his story now at the moment, and that's the way it should be because he can't exist without me. Of course, he can't. But you know, he's putting a lot of trust into other people and sort of going with the flow and evolving as it goes. And I think that that's a really good mindset to have in terms of getting the most out of your crowd.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. You've hit the nail on the head in terms of the crowd work and how you've got to be flexible in your mindset.
Yeah, and this is things I'm starting to come to appreciate more recently. You know, as I work this character now, it's not something that was always abundantly obvious to me.
Mm.
And again, when you know when I spoke about trust earlier, I think a lot of it comes from that. I think um, Pilates sort of when I first started training, Pilates was something I fell into, and it was something very much like a typecasting in a way. You know, again, that mask, that front that I was asked to put on, you know, that stoicism,
Yeah.
that professionalism, that code of conduct. It's what you've come to expect from a big man. And now I've been given the trust of, well, okay, now the shackles are off, now you're the void, what do you want to do? And it's the antithesis of all of that, you know, it's playing with the chaos, it's doing whatever is least expected of me. And that there's been a lot of trust put in me in that regard as well. And I think that that's sort of a really exciting position to be in as well.
100%. Yeah, it must be really rewarding to be able to get out there and know that the people that be trust everything that you're gonna do out there, trust that you
Yeah.
can work and give the crowd exactly what they want, which is a couple hours of a really great escape.
And it's only through doing that, through that experimentation, that you know I've sort of come to appreciate the transactional role of the crowd and the performer in this sort of thing. Before, you know, I think before certainly I had an element of thinking this, and I think maybe some other people that come through they think, you know, you're the wrestler and the crowd have paid to come and see you, which to a degree is true. But you know, if they weren't paying to come, they're not paying to come and see you. They're paying to come and see wrestling. They're paying to come and see the show. You are just a part of that show. You know, you're just a cog in that greater machine. And so you've got to respect the crowd because ultimately, if they stop turning up, there isn't a show for you to perform on. There is a transactional element there, and you know you've got to entertain them and respond and react to them as much as they've got to respond and react to you. And it is very much a transactional thing. And I think that you know I've mentioned it a lot today, but just because it's the biggest lesson I've learned since doing this, since being this character. You know, I felt a lot of creative freedom, and I've absolutely loved that. But the biggest thing that I've learned is just you know a complete new respect for the art form and for everybody that takes part in it, whether that's a fan, whether that's a member of staff, whether that's a performer, you know, whatever it is. You lose one of those cogs and the machine falls apart, sort of thing. So it's really good in that I've developed my love of this thing, you know, this thing that we all love, this wrestling. It's really sort of invigorated me. I think I was getting to a point where I was at a creative dead end. I
Mm.
didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do next, and this has just completely broken that through. And I've developed like a complete new passion for wrestling, and I'm really excited to see where I go with it. You know, I want to go loads of new places with it. I want to try all sorts of new things. I want to wrestle for new fans. I want to make new memories with people. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I'm really excited to see where I go from here. And I'm just I've got such a love for it, such a reignited passion for it, and I think that that's you know really coming across in my performances and bringing the best out of me as well.
That's so great to hear. I'm really, really glad, mate. I'm glad because for all or not, I don't care. You're a great guy to have in wrestling. And so I'm really glad you've broken through that wall and found that passion again because you
Thank
really
you,
damn well deserve it. You
thank you.
really,
Yeah,
not a problem at all, mate. You do. You do. And one more thing is they bloody when you had that plastic arm on your hand and it was stuck. You had to, and a kid came over, asked for an autograph or a picture. I think it's an autograph, but it was just on your strong hand. Tried to take it off. Now I stuck to that hand. You never stop when you're in front of those fans, and I, it's very easy to after your match. I can imagine it'd be very easy just to relax down a bit, but you don't. It's always up there. Pierre Dotson's quite the same when he comes out. It's like always got the arm behind the back,
Yeah.
and
Pays a lot of attention to those details, doesn't he? Yeah.
I love it. I love it, and I've seen it a lot with you as well. Those little finer details, even when you're not in. If like when your match is done, the show's over or something like that, or like there's like the last two matches on, it's always up there. So it's I pay attention.
Yeah, well, like when I remember that child coming out and asking me for the autograph. I remember it was stuck to my right hand, and I thought either I sign it with my left here, and that piece of paper might as well be a doctor's note for how illegible it'll be, or I just take the easy route out and say, "Oh no, I'm not signing signatures today," or find a creative solution to that problem. A bit of a struggle. Oh no, now it's stuck to the left hand, but now my right hand's free to write, and you get an extra moment with that fan, but also they get, I'm not denying them that because ultimately we are heels. Ultimately, people aren't rooting for us. People do hate us. The crowd do boo us. The crowd do chant against us, but that fan, if they want my signature, who am I to say no? Do you know what I mean? Who am I to sort of deny them that moment? That moment's just as important as any other. So if I can find a creative solution to that problem, and I think that's what I tried to do on that day, um, and for that kid, I don't know, has he still got that signature? Did he throw it in the bin on the way out? Did he think it would be interesting to ask me when my hand stuck to something? Did he think that it would just be a haha, let's make the big man squirm and try and figure out what he's gonna do here. I don't know, but for me, it was just it was another moment to sort of think and solve a problem creatively, and any chance I get to do that, I'm thankful for.
it's that's what it's all about. It's all about the fans. That's what it's all about. Um, I think all I've got to ask is, what's left for the future? Do you have anything to plug? Any socials? Anything at all? The floor is the voids.
Well, unlike you earlier, I will give you a little bit of a hint of what's to come. I mean, I'm starting to think, we've got the riot coming up. Um,
Hmm.
I've got my eyes firmly set on that prize. I think that I'm a tough man to sort of get over a top rope. I'm a tough man to pick up. And I back myself in those sorts of matches every day. So I'm hoping for a strong show in there. I'm hoping for the victory there. But beyond that, there's a lot of people in such a short time that I've sort of made enemies of, and I think myself and Casey, we're on a collision course. He's the superhero, I'm a supervillain. You know, um, but there's a lot of other people getting in the way. In the meantime, I think there's a couple of loose ends I've got to tick off. I won't say too much more, but I think I've got to sort of circle back around and polish off some of those loose ends, and we'll see where that gets me to. In the meantime, Facebook, the Void Pro Wrestler, Instagram at the Void, TikTok as well. I'm loving doing promotions. I'm loving sort of exercising that creativity. So by all means, keep an eye on those socials because you'll get to see all of the crazy stuff that sort of my brain's cooking up all the time. I recently showed you my cats for the first time. They didn't stick around for long; they had a cameo appearance, but there's a lot going on in my life. Who'd have thought that the Void would be a cat dad? But there you are. So you can always, if not for the promos, come for the lore, come for the Void lore. But yeah, no, get on board because, like I say, I don't know what's going to come next. But if that's the sort of thing that excites you, a bit of chaos, a bit of unpredictability, uh, you know, jump on, I guess, because I don't know what's going to come out next either. So yeah,
No problem at all. Get following everyone. And mate, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
no, thank you. It's been a pleasure being on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And see you next time.